Hello and welcome. In this Lightroom tutorial I'm gonna go a little bit different than I usually do. I'm gonna take this raw file and I'm gonna turn it into a picture like this. This photo was taken at sunrise on the Isle of Skye, very near to Portree, and the sun is actually not in the frame, it's a little bit to the left, but you see this beautiful light that we have here in the picture, and I really just want to take advantage of that. So first thing I always do is raise the shadows, and I'm gonna do that here as well. Just a lot of detail to work with. And the highlights, I usually bring them down. However, because we have such a lighting scheme right here of the light coming in the picture, I actually want to amplify that by bringing up the highlight slider. Now this is really not something I usually do because I really like to bring it down so I have a lot of detail in the clouds and in the sky. However, here there's really no interesting thing except for the actual light itself in the sky, and I really just want to exaggerate that, and I could not get a look like this by bringing up the white, so that's why I am going to bring up the highlights here. Really, I don't think I have done this with any other of my sunset or sunrise pictures. But speaking of the whites, I am still going to adjust them, and actually in this case I think I may bring them down. Now usually I really don't want to clip anything, however here I really don't think it matters too much if there's just a little bit of white clipped, just because pretty much the whole area right here is pretty bright. So once again, a very different tutorial than usual. I'm really just trying out something new and hope that it works. So I'm once again gonna adjust the whites, actually not really gonna pay attention to the clipping once again, but rather to the actual look. So I think that works pretty well. And the blacks, I still think I'm gonna bring down the blacks just to get a little bit more contrast in the photo, and I'm also gonna bring the contrast slider to the right just a little bit. So I think this already sets the starting mood pretty good. Then let me play around with the clarity slider, and I really don't want to go plus here, makes everything a little bit too harsh, and I really don't think it works here. I might actually go just a little bit into the minus, and yeah, I'm just gonna leave it a little bit into the minus. Color temperature is gonna be very important here. As you can see, it's obviously after sunrise, so there's not really that much color left. However, I really want to get a mixture between a little bit of warmish pinkish color in the highlights and some blues in the foreground and on the right side of the sky. So I'm gonna do that by mixing split toning and the color temperature slider. So let me go to color temperature first and just see what I want to add here. It's really difficult because there are so many different possibilities, and at the end I really don't want to go too far in one color. I really want the whole differentiation and the whole range of color that I can get. So I actually might not even adjust it too much. I might just warm it up a little bit and then directly go into the split toning tool, into the highlights, and add a little bit of pinkish, maybe even orangey pinkish color right here. I'm not quite sure if I want to go for the purple red-ish or the pink orangish color. I think both looks pretty good. Of course, that's way too much saturation regardless, but at the end I have to say that I think this look more towards the oranges looks a little bit more natural than here into the purples. I'm just gonna adjust it to make sure I have the actual fine-tuned color that I actually want, and then I'm gonna adjust the saturation of it, of course, and make sure that there's not too much but enough to where you actually see the difference. So I think that actually works pretty good. Then let me go back up to the temperature and tint slider and play around with the tint. Definitely don't want to go into the greens here because the sunrise, and I often like to add a little bit of magenta in my sunrise photos. I'm actually trying to add even more tint right here, and I think it actually works as long as I don't go too far with it. So I'm gonna go back to the split toning right here and go to the shadows next and see if I want to add anything in the shadows. I don't really think I want to add at least too much. Let's see. It might actually work with the blues, a little bit blues in the shadows, so we get a little bit of differentiation. And yeah, actually I think it works pretty good. The blues don't really affect the bright parts too much since we're in the shadows adjustment, but it just makes the right part and the shadows a little bit more bluish, which gives more differentiation. Now I'm not sure though if I like this look better or if I like it if there is more warm tones even in the shadows. You know, once again, really not a normal tutorial. I'm really just editing this picture for the first time and I don't really know exactly what I'm gonna do. But at the end, what do you think? Does this look better? Or does this look better? I think both have a very unique texture to it and a very unique look rather, but at the end I think I might even add a little bit of warmth in the shadows. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that and right away grab an adjustment brush, reset everything and just go a little bit into the minus temperature, into the blues here, make sure the feather is to 100 and just paint over the right here, because I still want some differentiation also in the sky. If I enable the mask, you see where I paint over pretty much just the right part and make sure everything looks nice and natural. So here's before that adjustment brush, here's after. I might even go a little bit more into the blues and you see it's just a little bit more differentiation between the warms in the left and the very bluish tones in the right. Now I think the overall picture is a little bit too flat still, so I think I'm gonna raise the vibrance here by just a little bit to make the colors pop even more. So I'm done with the basics adjustment and now of course tonal curve. Usually I really go into the plus with the highlights down here, but it really is a little bit too much since we already have so many bright parts. So I'm just gonna leave that one at 0 and play around with the rest, and of course just stick with whatever looks the best. Should be pretty quick right here, just some very minor adjustment and point curve of course, just see if I want to change anything there, but I'm really not sure. Yeah, I think linear at the end works the best. Now HSL tool, you surely know that I don't really use that tool too much because it doesn't have a very big impact. However, I really just want to fine tune those colors right here, so I'm actually going to use that and just change it a little bit, maybe also see if there's a particular blue that I like a little bit better. But at the end I don't really think I need to change anything with the blues. Saturation, I'm just gonna do the same thing, just grab this pinpointer and drag it over color and then just see if I wanna change anything. Luminance, also the last thing right there, and I might even bring that down. And for the blues lastly, I really don't think I need to change too much here. So here's before the HSL tool, here's after, just a little bit of a difference. Split toning we already covered at the start, so let me just go straight away down to the detail tool, and here you definitely want to make sure that you zoom in 1:1. Gonna raise the color noise reduction so we get rid of all of the purple and green sensor noise. And sensor and noise reduction itself, I really don't think we even need any. Maybe we do though, because the right part is pretty noisy, so I am actually going to raise that by a little bit. Usually I really don't like noise reduction, I'm sure you've heard me say that 100 times, but in this sunset and sunrise picture I don't think it's as noticeable if we don't have that much detail, since this is a very soft picture overall anyways. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of noise reduction and of course also add a little bit of sharpening as always, and as always also bring the masking slider to the right. And actually a thing that I wanted to do at the start but I kind of forgot is this thing right here. I really don't think it works. I'm just gonna clone that out really quickly, make sure we get the reflection with it, and yeah, that looks a lot cleaner. I really don't think this thing, whatever you call it, really worked there. Then lens corrections, gonna do my two basic things, which is remove chromatic aberration and enable profile correction. This was, by the way, also shot with the Canon 18-55 kit lens. And distortion removing, as always, a great thing, but I think I'm going to bring down the vignetting here, just because I think it works for this photo. Then additional vignetting, let me just see if I want to add additional vignetting. Maybe just a little bit, but if I want, yeah, definitely not too much. You know, usually I really try to cut together the videos and make everything as seamless and as clear as possible, but here I really try to go relatively raw, so that works pretty well. Last thing, of course, is camera calibration, and the only thing I'm gonna do here is just play around with the different profiles and see if there's anything I like better. The camera landscape, actually, I think it works a little bit. I might have to adjust the saturation, but I actually like the overall look. Let's just go through the other ones. Camera portrait also looks really good, actually. Really difficult to choose here as always, but I definitely don't think I'm gonna stick with Adobe Standard, because I've seen a lot of profiles that look a lot better than the Adobe Standard that we had before. I think at the end it's a question between camera landscape and camera portrait, and it's really difficult. Let me just see, camera landscape, camera portrait. I think at the end I'm gonna stick with camera portrait, just because it's a little bit more natural than camera landscape, but definitely, but let's just see the difference between camera portrait and Adobe Standard, which is what we had at the start. And you see it's definitely a very big difference, and I think it adds so much more dynamic in this particular case. So I'm done with the global adjustments, and now I'm just gonna fine-tune anything at dodge and burning and so on. But the first thing that I really think is a little bit too obvious is this. Remember, I've at the start added the adjustment brush just to add a little bit of blue here in the right portion of the picture, but I think the edge is a little bit too harsh, so I'm actually going to try and soften that by just making a really big brush and kind of make a very soft edge, and maybe even dial back a little bit of the minus temperature right there, so the distinction between left and right is a little bit less obvious and a little bit more natural. So that was a very slight adjustment. Also, a thing that I wanted to do is just kind of adjust the sky, because I really think it looks a little bit too unnatural, so I'm gonna grab another adjustment brush for that, just for the sky, and maybe make it a little bit brighter, and maybe even bring down the saturation just slightly so everything looks a little bit more natural. Yeah, I like that. And actually, I think there might be a little bit too much of this very pinkish tone in the photo. So let me actually go back to the split toning. You know, in my regular tutorials I really try to make everything, you know, from one step to the other without jumping in between them, to just keep everything as clear as possible. But this really is how I would usually edit one of my pictures, and I think it might even be a little bit more interesting if I do it that way. So as you can see, I've had the split toning highlights right here before, but I might think it's a little bit too much. Let me just see. I might bring it just a little bit to the right, a little bit more towards the oranges, and adjust it a little bit there. I think that might work a little bit better. Let's see where we had it before. It's gonna take a little bit. So this is which we had before, and this is after. I mean, it's really a very small difference, and I'm not sure how well you're gonna be able to see it on video after compression and everything, but in person I just like it a little bit better. I'm really a nitpicker when it comes to editing my own pictures. I really just go over adjustments over and over again and just see if there's a little bit of a thing that I like better than before. So I'm gonna go to the tint as well and adjust that one as well. Alright, so I'm finally done with the global adjustments, but there is a thing that you surely know that I usually do, which is just to grab a graduated filter, drag one over the bright part and drag one over the dark part just to kind of exaggerate the exposure. However, I think in terms of brights, we really have enough in this photo, so I'm actually just gonna grab one for the dark parts and just bring down the exposure a little bit for the right, just so we get more differentiation, more interest and more dynamic in the whole picture. I think that works pretty well, and I might even try to add another graduated filter just for the top of the sky to kind of close out the picture, make sure that is straight right there, and then just go into the minus exposure. This is a thing that sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's definitely a thing that I think is worth to play around with, and maybe just a little bit into the minus actually works here. And I'm gonna grab another one just for the very bottom and do the same thing. Also want to make sure that this is straight and go into the minus exposure, and I really love this look. Now when I look at the picture afterwards, I think there might just be a little bit too much in the bright parts. So let me actually go to the highlight slider of the basic adjustment and just bring that down a little bit. You know, this is once again a thing that I would usually not change once again in my regular tutorial, but I really try to do everything step by step how I actually would do it if I would edit this picture for myself. So I think that looks a little bit more natural. Here's before and here's the look that I went for afterwards. So a last graduated filter actually I'm going to add over the very top left portion of this photo, and really just try to make it a little bit more warm to get even more differentiation in terms of color in the whole picture. That's something I always say, and I really think it's very important to do that, to get as many different colors, as many different exposures in one photo, because all of that really helps to make your picture truly interesting and truly unique. So I've just added a little bit of warmth in the top left, almost not noticeable. Just once again adjust the fine tuning, really just want a little bit of a difference, so of course at the end everything looks natural. So the last thing I'm gonna do for this photo, I really think I'm overall done, but I am going to add some dodge and burning with of course the radial filter, and I'm actually gonna add probably quite a lot here. So instead of boring you for 3-4 minutes, I'm just gonna speed up that process, and I'll be back in a second. Alright, so I actually think I am done with dodge and burning. I've added quite a lot of filters. Here is before and here is after. You see, just a little bit more interesting, a little bit more dynamic, and the light is a little bit more complex. And actually, in a normal tutorial I would have said that I'm done a long time ago, but I wanted to play around with the saturation here. I always say that you should go with vibrant because it adds color way more subtle and more natural, and that is definitely true, but I actually think the saturation gives a very unique look in this case. It really kind of prefers the blues almost. Let me see here once again. Let's go into the extremes just to really show it. and I actually think I might add quite a lot of saturation. So I've had it plus 40 saturation, and I have vibrance as plus 20, so let's say I would go to plus 60 with vibrance, and you see it's a very different look than when I go plus 40 here. It's a little bit more harsh, but in this particular case I actually think it works, but only for the bottom portions right here. I think it's too much for the sky, so I'm gonna fix that by grabbing another graduated filter. Really sorry for making this tutorial so long, making this video so long, but I want everything perfect, just like I would, you know, if I would edit a picture for myself. And now I finally think I am done. So let me just quickly show you first of all the saturation adjustment. Here is before, how I've had it before the saturation slider, and here's it after, and of course after adding this additional graduated filter, and I think it looks a lot more different. It looks a lot more vibrant, and I really like the look. So it can be so valuable to just play around with everything, go back to it. And once again, please let me know in the comments down below if you like these kind of tutorials, or if you would like to, you know, really go straight from one point to the other and really don't repeat so many adjustments, but rather go a little bit quicker. Let me scroll down here on this very long history to the raw file, and this the raw file, very different to what I ended up with. I think it doesn't look even bad as a raw file, but at the end I really just love this very vibrant and very in-your-face kind of look. I might have overdone it with the saturation just a hint, and especially with the blue saturation, so I'm gonna go down here to the HSL tool again and just bring that one down. So I think I'm finally done here. Thank you very much for watching and bearing with me through this very long and very unclear and uncertain tutorial. But I hope you've learned something from it to use in your own editing, and I really just wanted to give you a little bit of a different perspective to which is a little bit more close to what I actually do, rather than just going from one adjustment to the other. You know, I really just love to play around with different sliders and just mix those adjustments and go back and forth to really fine-tune everything to where I want it. So once again, thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like or dislike the video so I actually see if you like this kind of video, and of course be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. I upload one photography related video every single day of the week, other Lightroom tutorials, photo tutorials, landscape photography edits, cityscape edits, all kind of stuff. I hope you have a great day, go out there and take some awesome pictures, and of course, as always, take care.